All right, guys. Good morning, evening, afternoon, whenever it is that you're watching this. I hope y'all are doing well. Welcome to my video on emergency preparedness. We are going to dive right in. I don't think this is going to be super long, which you are right now supposed to say hallelujah. Um, okay, so emergency preparedness. There is a ton of information in the world of emergency preparedness. Cities, organizations have plans, particularly large corporations have plans so that they are actually prepared for some type of a crisis, whether that be a human attack kind of a situation, hostage situation, shooting, or whether that be natural disaster. So we're going to look at some of that, kind of a really just skimming the surface again because this is such a huge topic. A whole lot of work came out of 9/11 because uh, the city was in crisis for such a long period of time. But like we started at the beginning of the textbook, there have been major events over the years that have caused the field of crisis counseling to really mature and come together. And so there's really some pretty incredible stuff out there um, in terms of how to help people through crisis. And the more we help them, the more effectively we help them. And the earlier the early onset of intervention, the more likely they are to recover well and be able to return back to normal life relatively quickly. Um, there has been an increase in the field over the past couple of decades, certainly 10, 15, 20 years, on training counselors for crisis and having counselors who specialize in crisis situations and disasters and emergencies of all kinds. And I'll tell a couple of stories of actually friends of mine who've done some crisis work throughout this video. Um, there has been an increase in violence in our society, school shootings, workplace violence. One of the first big workplace violence, we got the term going postal. You know, don't go postal on me. In fact, it's against the rules, maybe even against the law to say the term going postal if you work for the post office and you are inside the post office. And that comes from the incident that happened, I don't know when, I'm sorry, that was just an off the top of my head thing, 20 or 30 years ago, where a postal worker got upset and came up to the post office and started shooting people. And that was before Columbine High School shooting. It was a little ways ago, a little while ago. Um, let's see. Natural disasters, again, depending on the level of severity. Um, Tornadoes, tsunamis, hurricanes, those kinds of things, fires, massive fires. We'll get into more detail later. So the demand is there for sure in terms of crisis counselors are needed. If it's an area that you're interested in, it doesn't have to be the only thing that you do. One of my best friends is a counselor and he runs a counseling center in a church, but he also does crisis counseling. So he's called out as a special counselor in situations where there's been some kind of a death or maybe an employee was killed or murdered or some kind of incident happened. Most of my stories come from him. I wrote CACREP down here because the book spends a lot of time talking about CACREP, and I want you to know what CACREP is. CACREP is important and significant, and it is an accreditation body for schools that are wanting to become. It's the highest accreditation. So, for example, you might have a SACS accreditation in our area, in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, Southern Association of Colleges and Schools, something like that, which is an accreditation. But specifically in the counseling, one of these C's is counseling. You can look in the textbook to see what CACREP stands for. Sorry, I couldn't tell you. It is It is the most powerful accreditation, and is a very significant and very important accreditation. In fact, there's even movement in the direction of, if you want to become a licensed professional counselor, you have to have a degree from a CACREP accredited school. We're not there yet, but there's talk of that. There are universities that won't even talk to you as far as hiring you if you want to teach and be a professor there, unless you have a degree from a CACREP accredited school. Okay, so these are just some of the different aspects and models when it comes to emergency preparedness. Multidisciplinary crisis response team is kind of a broad term. And everybody has their own specific niche and their own specific role and what it is that they do, right? So the police and the fire and the SWAT are, well, you probably heard the term first responders. They are generally the first ones to be out there, and that is significant and important. They are keeping safety and bringing stability and rescuing people from piles of rubble or whatever the case may be. Then you have medical personnel to obviously treat injuries. You have mental health clinicians, which help with emotional support, crisis intervention, working with people, talking with people, helping them get to where they need. And you look at the order of this, and some of it is, and the book talks about this quite a bit, but some of this is super common sense. So let's say you show up right after the police do, and the fire and the SWAT do. There's people stumbling all over the place, bleeding, right? Your job is to get them to the ambulance, right, or to the medical personnel, because that's what they need the most. If there's bullets flying and there's danger, then your job might be to get them away from where the bullets are flying and then to medical personnel. So much of this in my mind it's funny, I would be reading in the book and I'm like, well, yeah, that's, it's just common sense. So there's a lot of shooting from the hip, flying on the fly, thinking on your feet quickly that you need to be able to do when you are a crisis counselor, because you need to be able to assess the needs of a person before you even walk up and talk to them. You may have a little bit of an idea as to what they need. Someone bleeding a lot, for example, as you approach them, you're looking around. As you're walking towards them, you're looking around. Where's the nearest medic? Where's the nearest ambulance? You're going to get that person. You're going to take them to the ambulance. If they can't move, you're going to go get an ambulance worker, a paramedic, and bring them to that person. So you're constantly assessing. In fact, the book even talks about that. As you're walking up to a person, you're looking and trying to figure out what do they need the most. They may just be sitting there staring off into space, dazed looking. They may be sitting there with their, hands in their head, sobbing. Well, they're not bleeding. They're not about to die. They're not in a dangerous place. They're probably ready to talk, right? Or at least, you can approach them and see if they won't tell them who you are, what you're here for, and say, hey, talk to me. Tell me what's going on. How you doing? Tell me what you saw. Tell me what happened. Just start getting them talking. There are all kinds of roles that counselors can play in crisis situations. There's someone needs to work with the media and talk with the media. Now, this is not, you don't just decide that day that you want to be that person, right? You got to have some kind of track record, some kind of proving that you can do this, and this is part of leadership teams, and you're volunteering for that and assigned to do that. Mortality liaison is literally helping feed the information of how many people have died, and possibly even addressing family members of people who have died. Pretty morbid, pretty rough task. So in other words, we have so-and-so here that's dead. Your job is to go try to find their family and tell them that their son, daughter, child, spouse is dead. Something else that to keep in mind, to keep in the back of your head, is what we call a vicarious trauma. so that you are traumatized vicariously from hearing the stories, from being on the scene, from seeing the destruction yourself, from having to tell someone their loved one is dead. So there's a lot of self-care that needs to take place as well. Let's see. Okay, so those are some of the different roles that we play and that are available to people, so to speak. Okay, so we're going to look at several different types of crisis. One is simply the terrorism slash hostage situation. Obviously, there is people experience just an extremely intense amount of stress in these situations. There are basically two types of trauma. There's individual trauma and collective trauma. And I don't know if y'all have ever thought about this, but how we affect one another in group settings is very relevant in a situation like this. So, a community is traumatized, and it either brings people together or they tend to fragment. A tsunami comes in and wipes out a neighborhood or a city or, a bunch of cities together. Then there is this collectively, we are in this together. There's a bunch of us that have experienced the same thing. And oftentimes people really do join together and pool resources and help one another out. There is a timeline for what types of interventions to use. I'm not going to go into that in detail, but you can see that on table 10.1 on page 249 in the textbook, and that's a good thing to look at. I really want to encourage you to look at that, because that is good and helpful and beneficial. All right. Responses to disaster, we can break this down into cognitive, physical, emotional, and behavioral. And keep in mind when you look at this that this is a really highly individualized kind of thing. No two people are going to react the same necessarily, although you're going to see people like, oh yeah, that was my experience exactly. But these are some of the kinds of things that people look at. Again, I'm not going to read to you, you got it. But these are things to look for and listen for, and help them through. Physically, people can have panic attacks, heart rate just through the roof, shaking, dizziness, weakness, chills. I shared with y'all my situation where my friend found his son having just shot himself, and he was vomiting, and he was so weak he could not sit up. He was laying in a ball on the floor, weeping and heaving. That was the physical reaction that he experienced. Very normal, very, very, very common, pretty traumatic, but very normal. And of course, emotional reactions, the whole gamut of all kinds of emotions, from anger to denial to quiet to loud to, it can be, it can cycle through these different emotions rapidly also. It's another aspect of that. And then behaviorally, and usually a lot of these behaviors just have to do with day-to-day functioning, right? Just people just can't hardly function if it's severe enough and it's getting to them, bothering them a lot. Let's see. Oops. Here we go. PFA is a well researched and well practiced process, psychological first aid. The basic goal of it is to reduce stress, to help them begin to, you want to engage them, move them in the direction of working through and processing. And so this helps people do that. One of the basic premises or beliefs with PFA is that people are resilient and they're going to be okay, right? So, and you can tell people, you know what, you're going to be okay. I mean, I know this is really tough, but you're going to be all right. And people tend to respond to that fairly well. And finally, that PSA works well with really all ages. It can be these techniques can be used with individuals as well as group settings, and are these they are used with individuals and are used with group settings frequently. Here's some of the basics of PFA. You are providing compassionate emotional support. You're just being there for them. You're listening. Those kinds of things. You're very non-intrusive and non-threatening. You're very gentle. You're very small, so to speak. Um, Especially if you're a big person, this big giant of men that come in and tower over people. It's like, sit down, get low, get on their level, kneel down, sit on the curb beside them, right? Don't stand over them at the curb, those kinds of things. So that's what we mean when we say non-intrusive and non-threatening. We are There's a huge emphasis on relationship, which as Christians we can certainly get on board with. So your relationship with them is going to be the primary avenue that's going to bring them healing and get them going in the right direction. You're empowering them to do everything they can and to believe that they can be okay, that they will be okay, that they are safe, and that they will continue to be safe. It's oftentimes a primary concern of people that have been traumatized is their safety. That doesn't even have to make doesn't have to be rational, by the way. So you look around and go, well, of course they're safe. Well, they don't know that. They don't feel that, right? Because what they've just experienced or seen, witnessed. Let's see. And then you not only are helping them with their immediate needs, but you're encouraging them to focus on like, okay, let's not worry about all this other stuff. Just what do you need right now? Like, you need a bottle of water? I'll go get you a bottle of water. Hang on, right? I mean, just real simple stuff. Your head's bleeding a little bit. You probably ought to get that looked at. Let's get you over there, and you're gonna be all right. It's not that bad, but let's get you looked at. Those kinds of things. So what do they need right now? And part of that is they are feeling taken care of and cared for, which is part of what brings healing to them and helps them begin to focus and be at peace. Let's see. They are oftentimes going to have a very heightened emotional state, right? So their adrenaline is pumping and cranking big time, and they are they may feel overwhelmed and extremely hopeless. So you're helping them work through that and talking with them about those things. You're helping them to reduce feelings of isolation. Just your warmth and your connectedness with them helps to do that tremendously in and of itself. But you're also connecting them with their family and their friends as soon as possible. And you think about 9/11, and the book refers to 9/11 a lot. You think about 9/11, and it's like, dude, they're not going to see their family or their friends for hours, and some of them maybe days. It's like they just want to be able to get a hold of their family somehow to let them know they're alive. And you can't even get out. I'll run tell them for you real quick. You can't get out either. It's gridlocked. It's roads closed down. It's crazy. The phone systems are messed up, overloaded, and not working well. So there's all kinds of challenges there. Look for be sensitive to cultural issues, special needs that people have based on their culture, spiritual differences. This is not a time for you to tell someone they're going to hell because they don't believe in Jesus. You're there to be Jesus to them, and loving and warm and gentle, and meet their immediate needs. When help them with resources, be realistic and specific. So their house is gone. You don't just say, oh yeah, there's a housing program that'll be set up for this and they'll help you with that and it'll be all good. No. Give them a number and a person and take them to the booth where they're talking about that. I mean, you got to be very specific and realistic. also realistic in that, if their house is gone, their house is gone, and oh, no big deal, it'll be fine. Yeah, no, it won't. My house is gone, right? So you're meeting them where they're at in terms of the realisticness of their situation. Here's another model of crisis intervention, critical incident stress management. Tons of material on this, and trainings that you can go to. Actually, anybody can go to these trainings. It's kind of cool to do. This is looking at taking their individual needs into consideration as you work with them and work to meet their needs. Utilizing the interventions that are available, the resources that are available, and it's important that you are aware of these things and looking at the nature of the situation. So again, like I said, this is kind of like the walking up to them, and while you're walking up to them, you're evaluating some of this stuff, and then therefore having a sense of what their needs are or might be. There are four, let's see, nope, six components. The minute I said that, I'm like, no, I think there's more than that. To the CISM model, first is lasts about 1 to 3 months. This is just the initial acute counseling phase that people go through right at the beginning. There's what's called an executive leadership program for those that have lost their people. So no, this is like police officers who've watched their lower people die. These would be the police chiefs and sergeants and those kinds of things. Then there is the multidisciplinary team, which we've already touched on in another model. There's training and ongoing things happening in the 9/11 attack, that they would provide counseling seminars and counseling sessions, and they would call them trainings because of the stigma. There's a lot of cops that are like, oh, I don't need counseling, I'm fine, that's for messed up people and weak people. And so police officers' bosses would say, yeah, you need to go to this training. Oh, yes, sir. Yeah, I can go to a training, So they would call them, but they'd end up being a counseling session or a session on helping them understand what to expect and the feelings and the thoughts and those kinds of things. Component 4, acute traumatic stress group training sessions. These are 2-day intensive psychoeducational. This is just a fancy word for it's kind of an educational format. You're on the board, you're writing diagrams, laying things out for them, hopefully getting them to be involved in the process. But it's all psych, it's all counseling based stuff. This helps decrease a sense of isolation, helps them normalize emotions, deal with guilt, and helps them identify and utilize coping mechanisms, probably that many of which they already have, they're just maybe not utilizing them. Then there's the hotline you always want to have available for people based on different needs, a suicide hotline or other hotlines that they might need. And then there's a reentry, which is what it sounds like, just getting people to that point of being able to get back to normal life. But the more trauma they saw, the more, you think about those people in 9/11 jumping out of the building and people that saw them hit the ground. Of course, I don't think you could see anybody hit the ground because of the dust and the smoke, but maybe that was before the dust and the smoke was that bad. I don't know. But these are the kinds of things that cause people to, and it's like, I'm not ever going to be normal again. So there's often that's what they feel, and sometimes people will say that. All right. This is another model, the Crisis Counseling Program, or CCP. This is one that really focuses on assessing strengths and looking at not only the material resources. In other words, you've got the ambulance over there with the medics, you've got the police over here, you've got the bottles of water over here, you've got the food over here, you've got the blankets to wrap up in, all of the material resources, but also the people that will help them. and really even summoning the positive things within that person that can help them, so their own strength. Um, let's see, the goal is to bring people back to pre-disaster functioning, that they're able to function. Um, Chaos has dissipated. There is much more sense of stability and normalcy, and they're able to move on. That's where you're headed with them. Um, Accept the face value. You got to help people reorganize their life, move on based on the way it is, right? And accept it, right? It's the whole, like, your house is gone, yes. And I don't mean like this insensitive, get over it, it's gone, don't worry about it. And that's not what we're saying, but helping them gradually get to that point of, you know what, it is gone, and that's the reality, and that is the face value of the situation, if you will. And so we're gonna work on our next steps and go from there. Um, Validation to validate people. Unconditional positive regard, acceptance, validation, very critical for their recovery. In other words, that you're validating their feelings and their thoughts, normalizing it. Providing psychoeducational focus, so you're educating them on what are normal and abnormal reactions to these kinds of crises. We have 2 more slides, guys, and we're just going to fly through these last couple. So natural disasters, wait a minute, hold on. Okay, good. Natural disasters, and again, I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on these last couple of little sections. I just want to say basically, keeping in mind and understanding the different types of needs based on the different types of disasters that you're dealing with. A friend of mine, for example, went to Katrina when Hurricane Katrina hit. This friend of mine I was telling about that does crisis counseling, and he is funny because he's like driving there and he's in his truck and he's like, Brad, he calls me up. He's like, dude, this is crazy. I'm like, well, this was like, the next day or something, right? Because you get crisis counselors need to get in there quick. He said, man, there's no street signs. There's no stop signs. There's no stop lights. None. There is debris in the road so bad, like there's times I don't even not even sure how I'm going to get from point A to point B. It's like, wow, insane, crazy. Where are you going to stay? Did you bring enough bottled water for yourself? Because there ain't no running water anywhere. There's no more good water, right? Period. So all kinds of practical types of things. So if you're going to a hurricane, you're thinking, okay, if I have a truck or a big vehicle, I need to take it. If I need to take lots of bottled water, I need to be prepared to sleep in my truck because I might end up having to do that because are no hotels, right? Other there's hotels 3 hours away, and kind of defeats the purpose. I'm just driving back and forth. Um, so those are just kind of some of the examples. In winter, obviously, getting people shelter and getting people warm is important. Those kinds of things. So that's really what we mean when we're talking about this awareness of what the unique needs are for each one. It goes into a lot more depth than that. Obviously, the textbook goes into some of that. Hostage situations, very volatile, very dangerous. Here's the 4 kind of processes that they go through. The hostages are oftentimes mentally ill, and most of the time, and can be very erratic and very volatile, and can be very dangerous. And occasionally, yes, they will kill one of their hostages just to let the police know that they're serious. Stockholm syndrome, you may have heard of that. I don't know if the textbook mentions it, but it's fun, so I'm going to talk about it. If you're held hostage for long enough, there's a tendency to kind of feel sorry for. You're watching this person go through all this stress and all this angst, and people kind of begin to identify with their pain and feel sorry for them. Um, I don't think it happens to absolutely everybody, but it's extremely common. In other words, as you're listening to this, if it's the first time you've heard of it, you might be thinking, oh, well, I wouldn't let that happen to me. Well, it may be, maybe not, right? So I think knowing about it helps, because I sure wouldn't want to feel sorry for them. I want to be alert and be thinking about how to escape and not feeling sorry for them, or how to get help, or how to get a message to somebody outside that might be helpful to, just whatever, right? But not feeling sorry for their pain, because no. Let's see. Um, Hostage situations are also fairly rare, particularly in the United States. If you travel a lot into third world countries, and the chances are higher that you'll be taken hostage, but it just doesn't happen um, super commonly. All right, and that is it. Thank you for watching my video, and y'all have a blessed rest of your day. Thanks. Bye.